Afternoon and welcome to our Career Success Workshop on Team Communication during times of COVID. Since the pandemic started, our personal and work lives have been turned upside down. Our teams have been separated and we've had to find new ways to communicate and engage with our teams, coworkers, tenants, and so on. So, what can we do to ensure our teams stay connected and build camaraderie? And we'll get right into it as we have a lot to cover today. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors, M Networks, and turn it over to Chris Tallarico, who is the division manager at M Networks, a division of McMillan Electric, to say a few words.
Morning, everybody. I certainly appreciate everybody taking the time and BOMA allowing us to sponsor this event. McMillan has been a partner with BOMA for many, many years. And we're proud to continue that sponsorship. Quickly, to speak on M Networks, most of you guys on the call will probably know us as a riser management company, or we perhaps may be doing your cybersecurity for base building controls, things that we do extremely well and have some incredible clients, including some of the people on the call now. What we probably are not best known for due to the old McMillan companies is McMillan Electric has taken on pretty much everything technology you can imagine in-house and incorporated under M Networks. So even if we're not your riser manager, we can help you with everything from everything electrical to low voltage cabling for your tenants. We have an incredible audio-visual department that does not only things like Zoom rooms like we're on today, but entire conference centers and amenity spaces. We can handle everything from cellular DAS in the building to the San Francisco Fire Department required ERCS systems, the emergency radio responder systems that you'll have to deal with at some point during fire life safety upgrades, as well as two-way communications in methods of egress, and all the way down to even BMS and fire life safety. So if you're thinking anything for your building technology-wise, M Networks is now your one-stop shop for everything, not just electrical and not just riser management, but if it has a wire and it has technology associated with it, please think of us. And I appreciate your time. Let's.
Are you Bay Area focused, or are you throughout California, or what's your geography?
Good point, John, and I appreciate you asking. So cyber-wise, we have clients all over the place. In fact, our furthest client is in London, England, with Salesforce Tower. For riser management and cyber, will go anywhere in the United States, without a doubt. For the physical, more hands-on, the cabling world and things, our strong point is here in the Bay Area, where we have 3 offices. However, we do have partners throughout the United States that we do sub to.
Right on. Well, Chris, we appreciate you stopping in, sharing a few words about the company. And it is now my pleasure to introduce our panelists. I'll start with the man that just spoke up, John Combs, the principal for River Rock Real Estate Group Incorporated. We also have Caroline Graft, senior property manager for Hudson Pacific Properties. And then lastly with us, we have Tiffany Ye, property administrator for JLL. So let's get started. And if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A box. We will try and get to as many as we can by the end of this panel. So question number 1, I'm going to kick this to Caroline first. What's the biggest change in your communication strategy pre and post COVID?
Good morning, Mel. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Change in our communication strategy has definitely been the method in which we communicate, as I'm sure many of you have switched over to Microsoft Teams or Zoom, other technologies that we'll talk about later. It's changed the way I think about communicating with my team, because if we work together, you know that I'm a big fan of just yelling across the office or getting a quick answer, but we can't do that anymore. And so I have to ask myself 2 important questions. Do I need to talk to this person right now? And am I going to talk to them soon? And so I use those questions to decide whether I'm going to interrupt what they're already working on and initiate a Zoom call, send a quick message, or if I already have time scheduled with my team, I just jot the note down and plan to talk to them later. I think more than just how we talk, what we're talking about has changed significantly since the beginning of COVID. For my team, it's really important we take time, as we've done this throughout the company, to talk about the overall well-being. Business as we know it has changed. And so for our teams, not only are we talking about what we're going to get done in the day or different tasks that need to be done, but I want to check in with my team and see how they're doing. How is this affecting them? What can we do to support the entire person, not just the employee working for Hudson?
Right on. Absolutely. John, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
A couple of interesting things. I sat on a plane praying I would get here in time to be in front of a Zoom call today. And I thought about all of this, and I thought, well, the phases that we've gone through were shock and fear when we were told to stay at home, shelter in place. Oh my God, I have to work from home. Will it work? Where am I going to put the computer? This is more than just, on a Friday afternoon taking off early and then catching up on email later. To an adjustment to this could be here for a while, right? And then I thought the next set was where we were doing all these group calls where all employees were called because we were worried they were depressed or they were scared or they were, didn't know what they needed to do or where to go for work. And we didn't know if they had computers. In fact, out of 150 employees, I had 3 without computers at their home, which just shocked me to death. And then we went to prepping the buildings, and during all of that, we were doing property inspections weekly because our biggest fear was that an owner would go by a building and there would be graffiti or damage, and we hadn't reported it because we hadn't been there.
Right.
And so that became a whole different idea about communicating. How do you prep the buildings? And we required our staff to do property inspections weekly. And then on top of that, we had people in departments who weren't busy, like construction. So we made them go do the inspections if the managers were too busy doing budgets. So we were looking at cross collateralizing basically our assets to go to weekly inspections. And then the biggest fear that everyone had was, oh my God, the kids aren't going back to school.
Right.
And that was a whole different set of communication conversations about how do we deal with parents whose kids must stay at home and be homeschooled. And then now we're in a position or a phase where is this the new normal and how long is this going to last? So in each of those phases, we had different types of communication. We went from, you're going to be okay. You're going to know people that get COVID. You're going to know people that die. But if you practice safety and health, you'll be fine. You have to make sure your clients are happy. You have to make sure your clients think you're at the properties and you're looking at the properties and you're taking care of the tenants. Oh my God, we got to get all the rent in, right? And so all of a sudden, that was a whole stressful time for property managers who had to try to collect rents, and they had all these rent workout requests. And then we're like pounding them with group calls. How are you doing? Let's have a crazy hat day. Let's do, cocktail party virtually. Let's play bingo. And the last thing these people needed was to do those kinds of social events.
Right.
But we just wanted to show that we cared and to make them happy. And then the whole kid thing, thank God mine are grown. I did a horrible job, by the way, as a parent. I told my kids, you'll be in therapy like I was. It will be my fault, but I did my best. So all these parents are like, oh my God, I don't want to see these kids every day, all day. I don't even know how to do their homework with them. I mean, this is way outside what I did in school. And so the whole kid situation was really interesting, which I will come back to on another question. And then the new norm, and we're all saying, well, when are we going to go back? And you're seeing that Netflix, Reed Hastings is saying, I don't like people working outside of the office. So I think the culture needs to be in the office, sparking ideas and events, and it's a family. And it's been very hard for me because we're a family-oriented company, and I don't get to see a lot of people. And
Yeah.
so communicating is not just sending messages, but it's receiving messages. And my example of that is that I wanted to go see all the employees as we soft opened offices. And they said, "Are you going to take a plane up to Northern California?" I said, "Yeah." They go, "Well, we don't want you in our office. You're going to have to, like, isolate for 2 weeks before we're going to be comfortable." I said, "Well, how about we go out in a park and y'all can sit on, blankets and far apart, and I won't get near you and we can talk." They said, "Are you crazy? We have kids at home." So you have to not only in communication communicate, but you also have to listen. And when you listen, your message gets changed. And that's the key, I think, in this whole thing is that we have to listen to what people are scared about, what they're feeling, what they need to know, and that varies. And then we can communicate. But the communication has changed in every phase of what I've just outlined. And I thought that it might be interesting. But overall, we're doing more calls. We're doing more. I didn't even know what Zoom was. We had 150 people working from their desk. And in 5 days, they're working from their house. We had people who had very slow modems, very poor internet connections. They were not going to be productive. We upgraded them at our cost. And there's no organic meetings. You can't just walk into your boss and say, how was your weekend? What'd you do? Or I'm concerned about this tenant. I don't know if they're going to pay rent this month. You can't do that anymore. So they have to, as Caroline said, you have to communicate down, but you also have to have a vehicle to communicate up.
Right.
And anxiety is really a key factor in all of this. And it's not necessarily the employees' anxiety. It might be their families, that they're at home trying to keep calm and happy. So I think that was something I learned in COVID was it's not just about our family, it's about their families.
John, I think listening to what you're saying, one of the key elements or themes there was in regards to adjustments. And ironically enough, Sylvia just pointed out to me privately that today is 6 months to the day since shelter in place started. We did not do that on purpose. That just happened to be the case. And one of the things I want to circle back to is this idea of those adjustments, the implementation of new technologies. And I kind of want to kick this to Tiffany. Tiffany, as an emerging professional, what have you seen out there? What have you encountered? What's your experience been in regards to that?
So we actually haven't implemented any new technologies at our building, but we have started to use WebEx more for conference calls. And we do have Zoom as a secondary platform just in case we come across any technical difficulties, just because that's going to happen. As for internal communication within the team and within JLL, we have been using Microsoft Teams to communicate with one another. And so far, I feel like all of these technology platforms have been pretty effective. But we do see us, exploring into using other technologies if they are effective and they do streamline our work.
Right. Are there any things out there in regards to like communication or messaging platforms that you've seen?
Well, we've also just been, doing the old school text message here and there.
Okay.
I've heard of Slack, but we don't use Slack within JLL. I know BOMA does use it, but I'm not too
Right on. Carolyn, what has been your experience in regards to this question?
Yeah, we're really fortunate. Our Hudson IT team was actually working on implementing Zoom right before COVID hit. It obviously was a great coincidence that we needed it so much 6 months ago. And so when the demand hit, we were ready. We had just begun the early phases of rolling out Zoom as a company. And so, that was great to be able to roll out Zoom. Like Tiffany said, we use Microsoft Teams every day. We've learned video function more. At first, we were definitely defaulting to Zoom, but within Microsoft Teams, if you haven't poked around, you should. There are a series of applications that integrate very easily with Microsoft Teams, and one is called the Wiki. And we use it to track projects, to assign tasks, to share information similar to a Google Doc. And so that has been really, that's eliminated a lot of emails, a lot of unnecessary text or calls, because I can just write something, tag somebody's name, they can go in and respond. I can see it all while I'm in a meeting doing something else. And so it's been crucial to our success to use Microsoft Teams over the last 6 months.
Right, right. And you mentioned that Microsoft Teams wiki function. What exactly does that look like on your end? Because we use Microsoft Teams, but it's very kind of on the surface, and it's really just like we're dumping documents and or we're just getting on video calls.
Sure. So if you're in Microsoft Teams, I'll put on my IT hat for a minute, and you're chatting with somebody or you have a group chat, there's a plus sign in the top of your heading. And when you click that, it opens up to dozens upon dozens of apps. And if you type wiki, just like it sounds, a little icon will pop up, and basically it looks like a blank page, a Word document, if you will. And within that, you can have headings and subheadings. And so we've used it to track collecting budget data, to track tenant request access to go into space, just simple tasks. Like I said, we used to use Trello as a team last year. And so this was a great way to integrate and only have one platform that we need to log into every day. And right built in is our instant messaging. We can jump on a video. We can, we've done fun channels, if you will, to kind of use a Slack term, where we have a foodie channel. So if you're cooking something great on the weekend, you throw a photo in and everybody can comment and share recipes. So just a way to keep that cultural component, like John talked about. How do you keep the water cooler talk happening? It's by making use of the tools that we have, like Microsoft Teams.
Right. You also sound like you just made an excellent sales pitch for Microsoft Teams. They're going to want this video.
Thank you.
John, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
First of all, I want to know what's on your shirt.
My shirt says Blue
Yeah.
Sky.
What the heck is that?
Blue Sky is the new entity that Harborough merged into. Actually, almost about a month ago, we made that official. So,
And how did they get that name?
how did they get the name Blue Sky?
Yeah.
It's based off of, they're based out of Colorado. So it was
Mhm.
very much inspired by the actual environment that they live in. I mean, I have never been to Colorado, but I hear that it is a natural wonder there in many different ways. And that is definitely a feature of, you know, their environment and culture out there.
Well, just a heads up, it gets cold there.
I'll be sure not to visit in the winter.
No. So unless you ski. So all the things that everyone said, I agree with. We have added dual screens at home where we pay for the screens for people at home. We have a PC loaner program because we found that families had one computer for the whole household, and that wasn't going to be productive for our teams to work, and the kids to be on school and the spouses to also be trying to use the same computer. So we've done that. We've in a few cases paid for increased internet speed because, I mean, it was like a hamster in a cage spinning that thing. It was like taking hours that what should take seconds. And that's cool too. A minute on Slack. I surveyed my team because I had breakfast with my daughter and grandson on Sunday. And she said, I said, how's your new job going? She's in social media. And she said, well, no one's replying to my emails. So I finally asked my boss, is anyone reading my emails because no one's replying? And he said, well, we don't read emails. We're on Slack. And she said she had no idea what Slack was about, and that in conversations on Slack, if you are up to date, you can research, you can search topics, words, names, and she says it's completely efficient. And so then I was telling our team at our practice call that she was upset because she was getting messaging around the clock because they're a global company. And I think it was Tiffany said, well, you can just put on there what your office hours are and you won't get those in the middle of the night messaging rings if you don't want them. Was it you, Tiffany?
No, it wasn't.
Was it?
It was Sam, John.
Who?
Sam Hoyle.
Okay, whatever. Sorry, I was trying to give you some credit, Tiff. You should just take it.
Thank you, though.
You're gonna get blamed when it's not your fault, so you might as well just take the credit when you can get it. Anyway, and so I went on Slack, and you can create channels, they call them channels, by client for client management. You can do by property. So anyone that's affected with a property can pull up on Slack and see what's going on. It's really cool. So we just won a 6.5 million square foot assignment, and we're going to try it out on the new client because a lot of people are touching all that real estate in Southern California. So I think Slack is something we should think about. I don't know if it can replace email, but it's an option or
Yeah.
maybe an enhancement. And I think that is changing, answer the question, technology. It's a new one that I'm learning about. It's very interesting.
Before we get into this next question, we're actually going to try and take a brief break for a poll here. It's a crowd participation moment here. Get everyone involved. Just kind of curious.
It says the panelists can't vote, so whatever.
They just heard what our preferences and what we're using are. Yeah, it looks like it's a combination of Microsoft Teams and Zoom, with Zoom being the front runner. And oh, look at that, Google Hangouts and Slack are also in there. So cool. Looks like it's kind of across the board. Moving on to question 3 here. How do you keep your teams connected since you're not all in the office together like you have been? And I'd like to kind of kick that to you first, John. I think you touched on culture, both professionally and personally, and the challenges of maintaining that.
Well, it's been a little bit organic. I'll tell you an example. Stan Rualdes runs Shorenstein, and Stan had the CEO go with him to visit all their offices to say thank you to the teams who were frontline managing those buildings, even though they were only like 10% occupied. And I thought that was a great example of telling the people who are showing up to work every day, as weird as it is, that they appreciate them. We are coming in the home office. The executive leadership is coming in every day, even if it's only part-time, so that we can see the teams that are assigned the days it's okay to come in for social distancing. We divided people into teams so that we could create that social distancing. And it's really been effective to be able to see, our family. And it's been very difficult to, on Zoom, you can see them, but you're not really seeing them. So we go by and we talk to everyone that's in every day, and that's really helped a lot. We also have our employee reward program that Caroline remembered when she was at The Rock. That's what we call her, The Rock. And it's called You Earned It. And so employees can thank other employees for things they did to help them and work with them. And you can reward points, and then the points are redeemed for prizes. And the funniest one I can tell you about is that we had one of those UCSF interns from, what's the BOMA program called? Help me. Create. And he wanted me to deliver him coffee. Okay, so I had to fly up here. He wanted to go to a certain coffee spot. And he wanted a certain coffee and deliver it to him. But that was his reward for collecting all these points. And so I think that you can have fun with employee programs. We also are a healthy employer. So we have contests and walking and steps. And we have all kinds of races with teams and then individually. And I hate losing. So I kill myself to get first or second. And I got third this week, just so you know. And then lastly, we're doing a lot of virtual training, but we've added a whole component about life experiences, life issues. So for example, we're doing, how do you manage money? What are the signs of COVID versus the flu? how do you do a 401k investing? And lastly, I took my trainer who was giving me virtual training classes because I'm not going to the Equinox. And I invited any employee, family member, boyfriend, girlfriend, friend that wanted to join Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 a.m. and you're all invited, by the way, for a virtual training class with my trainer. And we're using body weights because we aren't at a gym. And if you have heavy water bottles, you'll use those as your weights. But it is absolutely a blast. And it's I've found that exercise during all this is really important. It helps you with your mental attitude. And so I think that we have really expanded way beyond, how do you do a cam rec, or how do you hire a vendor, or how do you do bid leveling, to things that are more life learning lessons.
Right.
And I think it's really helpful. And I'm really proud of that. And I do believe, and you'll hear again in the end, that there's many great things that have come out of COVID. I mean, it's horrible how many people we've lost and gotten sick.
The silver linings.
Some amazing things out of COVID that are happening to people.
Yeah. Actually, kind of to segue off of that, John, or I guess you can say to kind of kick that over to Caroline. Caroline, what have you done with your teams? Are you joining John on these Equinox live gym sessions, or?
Well, this was my first invite, so thanks. I'll look for the email follow-up later today. I think it's a good balance, right? People get Zoom fatigue or screen fatigue from being on all these calls all day. And so like John mentioned, the last thing you want to do is only connect via Zoom. But I think with the right timing and the right thought behind it, a social Zoom activity can actually really benefit your team. And so some of the things that we've done as a company, we celebrated Earth Day together. People sent in photos from themselves all around the earth, and we talked about it, and we picked winners, and there were some prizes involved in that. We have What's Up Wednesdays where we did Zoom happy hours. It was something we used to do in the office, and so being able to have that carry over to Zoom, something that kind of felt familiar and normal, was really important. On a local level with my team, we did a Zoom dinner party where we all bought the same ingredients and cooked together, and we figured out who was better at cooking versus baking, or maybe just a mixologist. And so that was really fun. Other Hudson offices have done the virtual sip and paints, where you can kind of send supplies to your employees and then someone hosts it over Zoom. So there's a myriad of ways to entertain and keep the social part. But I also think just as much to connect and both professionally and personally is to value turning the screen off. And so I try and lead by example with my team, where even if you're at home, work the same hours, log on at the same time, and then log off at the time that you would normally sign off, because it's so easy when your computer is only 10 feet away from where you sleep or 20 feet away from your kitchen to just that last email, work on that last project. But it's really important, like John said, step away, go for a walk, do an exercise, talk on the phone, give your eyes a rest. And so as a leader of a team, I've tried to value that and show that by example of, okay, no more emails unless fire, flood, or blood. I don't want to hear from you till the morning. I mean, we're calling you Malcolm if something happens at night. But just trying to keep the life balance. That was one of the things I think initially people didn't know what to do. But just, you still have a life outside of work, even if you're at home working.
Yeah. Actually, just to kind of, that transitions perfectly into the next question I was going to pose to you all anyway, with that idea of being able to get sucked in so easily to answering that last email and, making that last phone call, and then you look up and another 3 hours have gone by and it's 1 a.m. in the morning or whatever it is. If it's not through just relentless work all the time, what can employees do to stand out and get noticed by their managers in this new virtual hybrid / physical in the workplace environment? And since you're already up, Carolyn, just kick it to you.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. I think it's for those who want to grow in the industry and who are committed to being in commercial real estate, it's an important one, because I don't want anyone to feel sidetracked because of COVID. There's still opportunities for growth and promotion, and now more than ever, you can show your manager the value they have in you as a team member. And so for me, this is about recognizing our employees and getting noticed. You know, checking in with your manager regularly. That was something that Hudson established long before COVID, was talking to your direct reports weekly, right? Giving them a time to really lead the conversation as the direct report, to come to you as the leader and say, this is what I need help with. This is, you know, what I'm going through. And we have some other great tools, things like LinkedIn Learning, where we can, you know, assign courses, or they can say, hey, can I spend the afternoon studying this or doing that? But more than anything, we all know it's true that you do the job that you want to have, not the job that you have. And so by going to your manager or going to the person next above you and saying, hey, can you train me on that? Or can I shadow you in that meeting? Or asking your chief engineer, hey, can you walk me around the building? I'd like to learn more about that system. Can I be involved in that just from a shadowing standpoint? I think now's the time more than ever, as things, you know, aren't quite as busy. They're very busy in other ways, but this is a moment where you can raise your hand and say, what else can I take on? And really show yourself as that strength and valuable employee.
Right. John, you know, going off of that, what do you do, since you're, you know, definitely higher up as a principal? What are you doing personally to recognize employees, but then also what are you trying to implement throughout your company?
I'm not following Caroline. That's just not easy.
She's a tough act to follow.
I'm like checking my notes while she's talking. I'm nervous. Anyway, well, I think that we look for creative ideas. So I'll give you an example. We had a property manager who has 2 young children and an infant. And all of a sudden, school's not returning and daycare's not returning in a lot of locations. And so she teamed with her neighbors to create groups by grade to hire a teacher to come teach them in person. And they rotated homes. And that was her solution to education and childcare. And so I think that there's a lot of ideas out there that people have. And when you can step up and offer ideas to your peers that need really some help, it means a lot. And we look for that kind of thing. And then someone asked me to mention that we're communicating via LinkedIn more and more, because we're finding that people are checking LinkedIn multiple times a day. They weren't years ago, but now it's like kind of like Facebook for work.
Right.
And we're finding that communicating and sending messaging of ideas and solutions on LinkedIn by all of our employees is really spreading the gospel, so to speak, to the peer group. And so as part of an onboarding of new employees, they are requested to connect on LinkedIn with other employees in the company so that they can learn what people are posting. And of course, some people, it's the 80-20 rule, 20% aren't even on LinkedIn, but the 80% that are, they're communicating and they're liking and they're involved in their lives. So, and I the proof of that is when I can go to an event, people know a lot about us that I've never told them, because they're following social media. So I think social media, and especially for business, LinkedIn is a great communicator to people, because you have to tell people 3 ways, 3 times the message. And so I think that LinkedIn is definitely a new add-on for us.
Right on. You know, Tiffany, I'm going to modify this question just slightly for you, but, you know, being somewhat new to the industry now, and working for JLL, what are some of the ways that you've had maybe managers or your superiors recognize you, or that you've seen that recognition kind of come down from the top through the JLL ranks that stands out to you?
So I totally agree with Carolyn about, if you want to stand out, you want to go above and beyond your role, and assist wherever you are needed, and you're always open to gain knowledge. As a property administrator, I think my main role is to build relationships with all of our tenants. It does make it really difficult when we can't host our quarterly tenant events. But there's a way you can stand out by being creative and finding an alternative solutions to continue interacting with your tenants from a social distancing and like a virtual environment. For the last 6 months, I've been experiencing based on like what our tenants seem to like, and we've gotten like great feedbacks about free food, which I think everyone does love. I mean, for right now, this month, if anyone hasn't and wants to interact with people inside the building who's still on site, on September 29th is National Coffee Day. At our building, we bought some grab-and-go coffees, and we're going to be distributing them. And I'm going to be personally going onto each floor and distributing it. And I also have on like my PPE just to protect the tenants and myself, but also finding a way to interact with our tenants and just checking in to see that, to make sure that they're okay. And if there's anything we can help them with, then they're always, welcome to come find us.
Hey,
And as
Tiffany,
for, yeah,
if you need a really good looking blue shirt, Malcolm knows where to get them.
thank you, Malcolm. I'm expecting one.
Oh man, I will get those for the both of you because obviously John is such a fan.
Well, as for like JLL internally, we do have our newsletter where we actually have like extra miles. So our general manager or anyone within like a higher up manager will give you a recommendation and shout you out saying, oh, you've been doing good on this project. And just, get that little shout out definitely makes someone's day. It made my day when my GM did it for me. So I think that definitely helped a bit. And also, you also know what other properties within JLL is doing, and you can also reach out to them for any ideas based on what you guys come up with.
Something you said actually sparked this question for me. How have you noticed a shift in your communication between you and your manager? And what does that look like in terms of frequency? Do you find you are communicating more or less the same throughout the day, more frequently? I'm curious to kind of hear more about your experience in regards to that.
Mm-hmm. So previously there were definitely more face-to-face interactions, but now we've mainly shifted to, calls, texts, or just messaging each other on Microsoft Teams. We do still interact face-to-face once a week though when we're both at the building, but not as much as before. I definitely feel like with this communication arrangement that we have, we actually are communicating more just because we have implemented weekly team meetings and I do weekly one-on-one wellness checks with my GM. I do monthly one-on-one wellness checks with my regional manager.
Right on. Caroline, this is something that came to mind as well. As a manager, how often do you want your team communicating with you? What makes you feel comfortable as a manager?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's important to balance, right? Because you don't want to over communicate and kind of fall into micromanagement. But the risk of under communicating, I think, is greater because people are at home. They might feel disconnected. Maybe in the beginning, we only had limited staff. Now I'm seeing my team more regularly throughout the week as we rotate. So something that's just worked really well for us is just like we would have grabbed our coffee and sat maybe in a break room or a conference room to start the day off. We now do that on Zoom. So everybody makes their coffee at home or in the office, and then we jump on a Zoom or a Teams call. And it's, what'd you watch on Netflix last night? How's that project at home going? Okay, what are you working on today? Great, the budget's due, the variance report. And we do a mix of both personal and professional. And for me, it's really helped to set the expectation because if I don't talk to them, I get busy in meetings or I don't have any other scheduled interactions, I know what I can expect that they're getting done. So when we talk the next day or later in the week, everybody's expectations were the same. And so I think communicating is both the wellness check that we've talked about that I value, but also productivity. Like, hey, what do you need help with? And like I mentioned, we talk to all of our direct reports weekly. Obviously, we're now talking daily just out of habit, quick IM here or there. We Teams each other videos also. That's not planned. Sometimes I'll just video chat or someone will be out in the field and they'll FaceTime me and say, what do you think of this sign? Is this in the right place? And so I think in some ways communication has gotten a lot more casual than it was before.
Yeah.
It's working.
That sounds great.
Can I add something on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Get into it, John.
So my kids are all grown. They're all losers. But I used to call them and they wouldn't reply. And they would text back, what do you want? And I said, well, what I want is you to answer the phone I pay for. That's what I want. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it off. You know, it's ridiculous. And so, but from that, we developed a program that if our clients are under 40 or our employees, we text if that's their preferred method of communication. If they're over 40, we always call. And the cardinal rule is if you have bad news, call, don't text. Because tones can really set things, make things a lot worse than they are.
Absolutely.
I think what Caroline's talking about is really important, that you over communicate, and you can't over communicate right now in anything, but also how you communicate is super important, and what venue you use to do that, or vehicle. And so I'm finding I have some clients who are texting me on Saturday mornings, and then I have other clients that are emailing me on Sunday nights, and I've got to answer all of it. I'm not here to not answer. So, you know, I just have to be careful and I go to bed too early so I can answer those late night, Sunday night people.
As soon as the sun goes down, right, John?
Absolutely. So you feel my pain, I'm sure.
So before we get into our last question that I have, I want to take a break to put up another poll just and get a feel from everyone in the room as to how frequently you all want to be checked in with by your managers.
Never.
John, you just said you expected everyone to pick up the phone whenever you called.
If they don't, they're dead. I love this question. I can't wait to see the answer. Wow.
Wow. There you go.
I would have never guessed this. Wow.
It doesn't really sit too well with you, huh?
Tori, that'd be a good article. I know Tori's
You know,
listening.
Malcolm, I think it's important. The word check-in feels very formal, like a sit down, clear your mind, let's check in. I think touching base, I would guess, would be higher. Because you want to see your boss, you want to walk by their office and have some sort of interaction. So whether it's just a quick IM, I'd be surprised if people don't talk to their boss or team members, even team members, more than that.
Yeah. This last question here, you know, I think, John, I'm going to want you to answer this one first, and then I'd like to hear what you have to say about this, Caroline. As leaders, how do you balance and provide transparency on internal communications and decisions during this time?
I've learned a lot in the past couple of years about this that is not comfortable but important, and that is, if you have to make a decision about laying someone off or they're not working out, you got to fire them. Once you make that tough decision, the kindest thing you can do to them is to communicate immediately so that they can make plans. And the guilt is not in the decision, it's how quickly can you tell them where they don't take it, you know, where it didn't disrupt their family and their lives, right? So we have a situation in Phoenix where a big part of our portfolio is sold off to Prologis. And we have two amazing maintenance and engineer guys who have been with us for a very long time. And they're worried sick about their jobs. And so I said to our regional head over Phoenix, I said, well, we have to play the double negative. If we don't get more business and they're cut, this is what will happen. We need to tell them what their severance is going to be. We need to tell them how long we're waiting to see if we can get more business to replace what we've lost to the sale of the properties. And we need to be very honest and straightforward with them about this, because this is their family and their lives. And they were like ready to run. And when we got done telling them how we were going to handle them if the worst possible case happened, then they were prepared for that. And now they want to stay to the very end. They're that loyal, but their loyalty came back because we were honest and transparent with them. Sometimes you can't be because clients are, you know, going to sell a building, you can't tell the staff yet. those are horrible situations, but the best situations are when you can be, very forthright. The last thing I want to say to everybody is, and I'm the oldest on the panel, so you don't have to agree with me, but you got to listen. And that is that property management is countercyclical. This is the time for property managers. And when it's frothy markets, it's about the left of the decimal point. It's about trading properties, creating a value and selling it. When it's a down market, and this is definitely the start of a down market, it's about the right of the decimal point. It's about saving expenses, cutting operating expenses, saving tenants, keeping the tenants. This is your time. If you're a property manager on this call, and it is a BOMA call, by the way, it is your time, and we're countercyclical. This is the time for you to jump up in your career, seize those opportunities. There's a very short supply of qualified people. And I think even though leasing activity is still like they're showing space like right and left, I think that there's changes in density and all those things, but this is clearly time for you to shine and jump in your career. And I'm so excited that I get to still be involved in another cycle of that, because I tell you, every down market, wherever I am, my business or my career takes off, and we're right there. So I really think this is not negative, COVID. If you've lost family or friends, I'm so sorry. I have lost friends through COVID, but this is a wonderful time for a disruption, and we can seize that moment. And Tiffany, I don't know if you're the youngest on this call, but you have an incredible opportunity to find those moments or ideas or products or technologies or whatever it is to really have a career like I've had, which I'm so proud of and grateful for. And I just wanted to end with something super positive, because I really live it and believe it.
Yeah, we appreciate the uplift, John. Caroline, how would you like to follow that up? What's going on?
Yeah, Caroline. Yeah,
Thank
Caroline.
you, John. You just boosted the whole mood a little bit.
Love you lots.
Malcolm, I think your question is at the heartbeat of this pandemic, right? Unlike maybe a business decision change, maybe a shift in operations, this is a global pandemic. Like John mentioned earlier, you have to think about the employees' families, their situations, their internet, their, everything. And so the way you communicate, like we've said already today, is so important. And so Hudson has done a great job of this from the start. We're West Coast based, so we don't have to fight time zones, but we've done everything. We've done the global call where the whole company gets together and we hear from the top down. We've had regional leadership update us on things that are changing, but then even at the local level, my management, myself as a manager to my team, we've done a great job of providing the space to have the conversation. When we get decisions handed down to us, we often don't understand the why, but what we can do in the pandemic is allow the employees time and space to process what's being asked of them. We might not be able to change what we're asking of them. Hey, we need you to come in, we need you to do this or whatever, but we can at least acknowledge, hey, we know this is hard. We know that you might have a family member that's sick. How can we work with you to make sure that you're there when you need to be, or maybe you're sick yourself. Okay, how can we keep you at home and get you to the doctor as quickly as possible? There's so much more to think about in this moment. And one of the things I've said from the beginning is that I think loyalty to employers will only increase through COVID. If your employer does right by the employees throughout all of this and you survive this together, it'll be really hard to recruit people away because they have walked through the fire, so to speak, with their company. And I've worked for John, so I can vouch for it. It is a family-oriented company, so is Hudson, and we value our employees. We want to get through this together. We want everybody sitting at the table when we come back to the office. And so if you're not feeling like you're getting your questions answered, I encourage you to go to your manager, go to your HR department, ask the questions. Don't be afraid. I know it can feel intimidating when a big company rollout comes out of what we're doing or when we're reintegrating, but at the end of the day, we believe in the people we hire. We want them to feel safe and feel empowered and want to be here.
Yeah. That is, I feel like that kind of offers a segue here into our Q&A. We got a couple of solid questions here. And I want to kick this one to you first, Caroline. I feel like you might have some particular insight into this. the question is, they're seeking advice for how to go about setting work from home boundaries. There's more pressure than ever to always be on, connected / available and to show that you are working. How do you suggest, employees or your team members kind of navigate around that as the people that they would be reporting to for the most part?
Yeah, great question. It's going to come down to your relationship with your manager and communication. Obviously, that's what we've been talking about here today. But like I said, I try and lead by example. And at Hudson, we just kicked off kind of the busiest time of our budget season. And so these couple of weeks are a bit of an anomaly, but the rest of the 6 months in COVID, it's been really important to me where I'll get on Teams and I'll say, you need to sign out, please clock out, please turn off. That can wait till tomorrow. And really reassuring employees. I think sometimes people put pressure on themselves, like, oh, I got to get this done. But as the person assigning the project, we try and have a lot of transparency on deadlines. Hey, I'm giving this to you, but I don't need it back till the end of the week, or that can wait if this comes back from engineering and you need to get to that. And so I think setting boundaries is a two-way street, right? I'm also, I was just having this conversation with a friend yesterday where, especially with littles at home, I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old niece and nephew, and they are being educated in the same house I live in. And so when I go out to get a refill of coffee, I'm greeted by little people and they want to hear about work, or they want to tell me about their Zoom call, or they're doing PE in the living room, And so my coffee break might be 10 minutes instead of 2 minutes, but I know that I've got my phone with me or I'm back on the computer. And I said to my team, look, if you've got to step away, you're taking a lunch at a different time, or you've got an appointment, as long as we communicate, we can work through anything. But I think the manager has to set the tone, especially if you see employees working into those 8, 9, 10 o'clock hours. It's different, like John was saying, client emails you or things come up, we get a call from security. But if someone's just doing work that can wait, lead the charge. Tell your employees, get off the email, sign in later tomorrow. Make up the time so that people really feel like we value as leaders the boundaries at home.
Right on.
But Carolyn, it's kind of interesting because that's what we preach, right? But then when you call and no one doesn't answer, and you call again and no one answers, and then they say, oh, I'm sorry, I was out mountain bike riding, and it's 2 p.m, and the client wants an answer. I mean, it is hard to acknowledge and accept that people are rebalancing, they're spinning plates, they're working, they're also trying to exercise, they're also trying to take care of the kids. I mean, it's for me, a traditionalist, it's really uncomfortable. But you have to just let this evolve and learn to, this is how people are coping with life. Would you rather them, be in the crazy ward because they're having a mental breakdown, or do you want them to go mountain bike 2 to 3? I mean, I know what I'd pick. So, but it's not comfortable, and it's not comfortable knowing when we can all come back to work, or will we ever come back to work all the time. And that's what I think this whole conversation we've had today is about. It's the traditional work and work orientation and agenda is not the same. And if you embrace it, you can really have some breakthroughs, but it's really tough. And the problem for all of us is we're in the service business, and if the client calls, someone better answer and get it handled, right?
Yeah.
So it's really tough, I mean, I've been on the phone this week with several people saying, oh, I'm going to go out for a bike ride, or I'm going to go paddleboard. I'm like, okay, when? I catch myself like, oh, okay, cool. That's good. You'll have your cell phone in case there's an emergency, right? Oh, yeah, well, I'll have my cell phone. So, I mean, just the reality of where we're at is just so odd. But all of you have done such a great job communicating how we're all trying to put up with it, deal with it, and succeed, right?
Right.
And Tiffany, you've had some really good points, Tiffany. I really appreciate your angle where you're coming from. And, it's been 100 years since I was at your, where you were in your career. So thank God I made it. But, it's interesting that I cannot imagine being you today in a job like that. I mean, with what we're dealing with, I just think that it would be insane. I mean, I had to worry about logging into a mainframe computer the first year to do budgets, not on tablets. Okay. You're like dealing with Slack and all this other stuff. So I found you all very interesting, and preparing for this meeting scared me to death because you all are in different facets of your life and your path, and you're dealing with things that we're all dealing with. And it's interesting how you're approaching them. I really appreciate being part of this, Malcolm.
Yeah. Hey, Tiffany, we're kind of run out of time here, but I thought it'd be interesting to hear from you, from your perspective, your experience. Um, what does that look like for you, kind of trying to set those work from home boundaries with your managers since you're kind of doing it upstream as opposed to downstream?
Yeah, I totally agree with Carolyn, actually. I think communication is key and just being open with your manager, creating that relationship between you two, not just you two, actually, just with your assistant property manager, to just the whole team. Not even just property management, but also engineering or like janitorial and security, just so they know what's going on. And I think the communication part where you let your manager and your whole staff know that these are your hours from 10 to this time. You can contact me, but also knowing that like, oh, from 12 o'clock to 1, I'll be on my lunch break, or I'll be helping someone with something, or like if you have kids, your manager would say, oh, I'm going to be helping my kids from like 9 to 10, so I'll be offline at that time. So then it'll come upon us, for me and my AGM, to take on that role and to cover for any, emergency issues that might happen. And we obviously know that she has her phone on her, so if we do need to get through her, we can always contact her via phone. But we do know that she's offline, so any email that needs to be responded immediately would have to come through us. So
Okay.
definitely communication is key. I think it's best for everyone to sit down and just build that relationship, because we don't know how long COVID is going to last. So that open communication between the whole team is an important aspect.
Yeah.
So
Right on. Well, this is the last question of the day here, and I think I'm definitely interested to hear how you would answer this, job. This comes from Andrew Gardner. Which of the temporary solutions that have been implemented during shelter in place will become permanent parts of your daily operations?
I think work from home, part-time, full-time. We surveyed 25 accountants, and 2 said they wanted to come back full-time. All the rest said half day twice a week or full day twice a week. So we are, I just bought a building to move our home office in, and we are going much less dense, much more desk shares where you check your headset and your keyboard into a locker so the next person comes in and they have their own. And I mean, we are really trying to roll up doors, and the cafe's indoor outdoor, and we have pet friendly with, you can bring your pets with a dog relief area. I didn't even know what that costs. I nearly had a heart attack, by the way, for dog relief, like 30 grand. But at any rate, I think that, the world is changed permanently from this. And we can all return to some form of work, but our company will never, ever go back to what it was. And that's okay. It's made us learn that people can work from home and they can go paddleboarding. And by the way, I need to go parasail in the smoke, so I got to go in a minute.
Okay. Well, with that, I think, are there any, since you already gave your closing remarks, John, Caroline, is there anything that you would like to say before we end this?
Thank you so much for having me. I think what I would leave people with is, BOMA is such a great network and resource, but the commercial real estate industry is really made up of incredible people. And so if you're not finding that open communication, obviously I gave you resources within your own team, but please feel free. I think I speak for John and Tiffany. We're a resource. We want to help. And if you have more questions or want to just talk more about life and COVID, please reach out. I'd be happy to chat more.
Awesome.
Awesome. Tiffany, anything you'd like to end with?
I just want to say thank you to BOMA and thank you to M Electrics for sponsoring this webinar. Thank you for having me on as a panelist. And just adding on to Carolyn, I definitely feel like You can always reach out to all of us if you guys want to speak to us or anything. But also, there's always the whole BOMA family. There's always committees that you can speak to. We're all family, so just reach out if you feel like you need to talk to someone.
Awesome. Well, with that, I want to extend a very big thank you back to all of our panelists, John, Caroline, and Tiffany. We very much appreciate learning from you all today as we continue to work in this quote unquote new normal. We hope everyone can take some of the tips shared during this and implement them into your work life. And last but not least, I also want to thank M Networks for sponsoring today's webinar. We value your ongoing partnership with BOMA San Francisco. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have fun
Have a
parasailing.
great day, everyone.
In the smoke.